WCNC Charlotte. This is Flashpoint, where power and politics collide, and the tough questions get asked and answered.
Hey folks, welcome to Flashpoint inside the WCNC app. I'm Ben Thompson, joined by Julie Kay. We're going to talk a lot about Senator Lindsey Graham and the current race to replace his seat in the Senate. Before we get to all that, I do want to do a bit of a look ahead because we also have City Council here in Charlotte returning this week after a month off, and a couple of big things on their agenda, including a new person running the meetings, and that's the new mayor.
Oh my goodness, and he's going to be really thrown into the gauntlet immediately. We have yet to see the actual agenda for this meeting, and so we don't know for certain if some of these big topics will be on there, but they don't have a lot of time for things like I-77. The data center moratorium is running down on the clock, and so if it's not this meeting, they're certainly already thinking about it. And I know for a fact that I-77 has been an ongoing discussion behind the scenes, even while they're on this break, because that's another decision they'll have to make soon is, do they go back to the CRTPO and change their votes? So these are all things, even if not addressed this particular Monday, will have to come up very, very quickly.
This fall. In addition to also, I know curfew, something else that they're looking at as well. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the new mayor handles, you know, some of these issues. Typically does not get a vote on a lot of these things unless it's tie-breaking or otherwise, but is in charge of sort of handling the meetings and ushering these things through. So
some of the things which can be not just hot topics, but can cause a bit of heated debate amongst. That's right. And so, you know, in every conversation we've had with him so far, he really wants to lead by, you know, keeping things very even keel. From his experience as an attorney, you know, he really relies on the fact that he's used to these very complicated topics, and keeping things even keel is the way to go. And so it'll be interesting to see that actually work through in practice.
All right, so stay tuned for the latest on that. In the meantime, let's talk about Lindsey Graham. This past week, several memorials, both in Washington, D.C., down in Columbia, to say goodbye. You were at some of those, and and give us a sense for what it was like.
It was, so we had, of course, on Tuesday was D.C., which we're going to play a clip from that as well, but I was in Columbia on Wednesday for that memorial service. Funeral procession starting at the State House, all the way down Main Street to First Baptist Church of Columbia, where that public funeral service was held. So I got a chance not just to, of course, you know, watch the moment it happened, which was very somber, of course, very reflective, but also talk to some people that were there. There are, of course, a lot of important people, Henry McMaster, governor, who we'll hear from in just a second, some people running for that seat, which we'll get to in a little bit, but also just hundreds of people there to pay their respects. And we'll listen to them later, but just from talking to people, even people who were there who did not necessarily ever vote for Senator Graham and maybe don't identify as a consistent Republican, really had a lot to say in terms of just the amount he did for South Carolina. It's very easy for people, I think, in that role, especially for a long time, to get, you know, involved in international stuff, which he did, absolutely. But I think what I would heard from people on the ground there is that he never lost sight of his home state, which I think people really respected.
Well, it's not often, regardless of your politics, it's not often that you see a sort of pomp and circumstance in that level of, you know, sort of pageantry on a regular, everyday basis in South Carolina, North Carolina, anywhere else in between. You know, so it is one of those moments that you want to stop and sort of witness it. What do we start off with? Who do you want to listen to first?
I think we're going to, you know, take a moment to just listen to some of those services. So I've got a clip here pulled up. This is the full speech from Governor Henry McMaster on Wednesday, and from Tuesday, President Donald Trump, both of them remembering Senator Lindsey Graham.
We're all awake. I want to thank the family, Darlene, for inviting me for this very special moment for a lot of us. We meet in sadness over the loss of one of South Carolina's greatest sons, but also to celebrate this poor boy from a little town in South Carolina, as he called himself, to celebrate what he accomplished through grit, determination, character, for his state, his country, and the world. His impact was enormous, and I'm confident, as are you, that there will never be another Lindsey Graham. He recognized the greatness of America and her obligations in a dangerous world. Lindsey Graham recognized the seriousness of his work, but also the value of humor and a light-hearted spirit. Lindsey Graham understood the hopes and dreams and needs of his state and delivered every time. Presidents, paupers, famous or forgotten, he treated everybody the same. We have seen him attack evil and injustice and embrace friendship and the common good, all with equal fervor. You know, the psychologists tell us that when we grieve for lost friends or loved ones, part of our sorrow is for ourselves. In a melancholy reflection on missed opportunities, mistakes, roads not taken, in short, wasted time. I don't think Lindsey wasted any time. I have really never seen him sitting still. An old farmer once said of somebody, he said, the boy is either going somewhere, getting back, or going again. And that's Lindsey. We may ask ourselves at times like this, where will I be when I get where I'm going? We never know. We never know how any particular event might influence the next event and the next and the next. You'll remember comedians Dan Rowan and Dick Martin hilariously joked on their TV show Laugh-In about the fickle finger of fate. Lindsey felt that finger of fate. As the first in his family to attend college, soon to lose his mother at 20 years old, then his father 15 years later, with his little sister Darlene at 13, becoming his responsibility. Lindsey Graham would have been the last person on earth to imagine that he would graduate from law school, be elected to the United States Senate, travel the world in service of his great country, earn the respect and confidence of world leaders, and become the ally, friend, and even golfing partner of the President of the United States. But he did it all, and he did it with his sense of humor, humility, and integrity intact the whole time. Three little stories. I remember being on the campaign bus with Lindsey and Senator John McCain leading up to the 2008 presidential election. There was a show, it's called the Ali G Show on TV. Maybe y'all remember it. It had a character named Borat who was a reporter. The episodes were absolutely ridiculous. As the bus rolled along, Lindsey would invariably begin retelling those scenes, acting them out, first through chuckles, then laughing, until finally his words became incoherent, by which time Senator McCain would be in hysterics. Peals of laughter were engulfing the ever-cynical consultants and reporters in the back of the bus, and it was something I will never forget, the sight. The respect, love, and pure, unabashed joy shared by those two remarkable men. I also remember being in a crowded conference room one time in the White House a few years ago with President Trump, Lindsey, Senator Tim Scott, Congressman Joe Wilson, Attorney General Alan Wilson, and the various Department of Energy officials and staff. What was the subject? It was a hot day. The department's wholly unsatisfactory performance in promising but not removing plutonium from the Savannah River site in South Carolina. The room was tense. The top DOE official made a bold statement about how their great progress was going along in removing that plutonium, which Lindsey, who was sitting next to the president, perceived as highly inaccurate, I'll say. And he said so in loud, plain language. As younger staff members tried to disappear into the walls, the president reached over, patted Lindsey on the arm, and with a twinkle in his eye said, "Maybe you should calm down a little bit, Lindsey." Lindsey quickly replied, "Thank you, Mr. President. That's quite a comment coming from you." Everybody except the Department of Energy officials loved it. Here's another one. In 2002, Lindsey was elected senator. Mark Sanford was elected governor. I was elected attorney general. Lindsey took his oath before we did on January the 7th in Washington. Mark and I would take ours at the State House later on Wednesday, January the 15th, along with the other constitutional officers. We all assembled just before noon in the State House. Protocol provided that all the participants would gather in the library up in the top to be announced in turn and proceed out down the steps to their seats for the ceremony. When the names were announced in sequence, Senior Senator Fritz Hollings and then brand new Senator Lindsey Graham emerged under the portico of the top of the steps of the State House. Ours being mostly a Republican state then and now, Senator Hollings, a longtime Democrat, received noticeably polite applause. As it began to subside, Lindsey's name was announced, and as applause immediately began to swell, Lindsey reached over and grabbed Senator Hollings' hand, and they raised it high with his own. So there we were, if you get this picture, our two U.S. senators, hands held high, waving to the crowd when the thunderous applause washed over both of them. I believe that not many men would have done what Lindsey did. I recite those instances, and I have one more that came to mind. I was sitting next to Congressman Clyburn. South Carolina was in a contest with the rest of the country for some major funds to help us be innovative in our technology. South Carolina decided on energy. We need energy. And we were working about 300 applications. It'd be narrowed down to 12 states would get this money. So we worked, and we got notice that we were maybe down to about 30. Finally, we realized they told us we were one of the 12 that was going to get the money. It's $48 million, I think, a year. Well, what did we do? We ended up, I was on my phone in my office in Columbia. Lindsey was on his phone, I think, in Washington. And Congressman Clyburn was on his phone in Washington. And Secretary Gina Raimondo, Secretary of Commerce under President Biden, was on her phone, I presume, in Washington. And we talked and we made the case. Each in our turn said something. Finally, towards the end of the conversation, Lindsey started cutting up as usual. It ended up being a very happy phone call. And we didn't find out then, but we found out later that we would get the grant. But at the end of that conversation, Secretary Raimondo said something I found very interesting. She said, "Gentlemen, this is the first time since I've been in this office that I have had a bipartisan conversation." To which I said, "That's the way we do it in South Carolina." Lindsey was at the forefront of that type of approach to life. I recite all these instances just to present the picture of a man I would describe as a full-fledged son of South Carolina, a man of genuine happiness, dedicated to his state and devoted to his friends and to his family. Yet, a man who, to protect the people of his state or in response to injustice, could bring forth a torrent of ferocious firepower as great as any battleship. We saw a glimpse of this, all of us did, on television when Brett Kavanaugh was under unfair attack in his Supreme Court Justice hearing. Today, in our 250-year anniversary since the birth of our nation through a violent revolution, I am confident that South Carolina's great leader, Christopher Gadsden, general, statesman, and creator of the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, would be very proud of Lindsey Graham. I know I am. And I know that you are. I know that people all over the world are. And we are deeply grateful for the life of this poor boy from a little town in South Carolina. We have great music in this church. My church is down the street, but this church got great music, so is mine. We don't have 500 people in the choir, though. If the singer-songwriter Vince Gill were here, Y'all maybe know the song. I bet I know what he would say. He'd say, "Go rest high on that mountain. Son, your work on earth is done. Go to heaven a-shouting, love for the Father and the Son." We love you, Lindsey. Goodbye. Until we meet again.
Thank you very much. Vice President Vance, members of the Cabinet, members of the House and Senate, distinguished guests, Darlene, and the entire Graham family. We love you all. Today we gather in the deepest gratitude and profoundest sorrow to honor a beloved friend, a devoted brother, a respected statesman, a giant of the United States Senate, and a true American original who left us much too soon. And that can only be the one and only Lindsey Graham. By the strength of his steadfast convictions, the force of his magnetic personality, and the goodness of his noble soul, Lindsey rose from a small town in rural South Carolina, a place he loved so much, to become a constant fixture of American politics at the highest level, and a force to be reckoned with all over the world. For more than 30 years, nothing of consequence happened in this capital without Lindsey Graham knowing about it. Nothing of significance happened anywhere in the world without Lindsey Graham having a view on it. And no bill became law in the most exceptional republic in human history without Lindsey Graham having a say in it. He was a man who gave America the full measure of his good and mighty heart until that heart itself just gave out. But even though Lindsey's life was cut short while he was still so full of vim and vigor, there can be no doubt that he lived absolutely to the fullest. He died doing the work he was born to do. He was truly a great politician, serving the country he loved to serve so deeply. He went out at the peak of his career and the top of his game as a legend that every one of us, many of us here today, are blessed to know him, and a friend that none of us will ever forget. There was truly nobody like Lindsey Graham. It was his hometown of central South Carolina that Lindsey first learned the art of politics. His parents ran a bar and pool hall on Main Street with a room in the back where the family spent and slept and did everything that you had to do. As Lindsey said, his father taught him the key to being a successful bar owner is that you have to be funny enough that people will keep coming back, and that you have to be tough enough that you can stay in business and thrive. A very difficult combination. For his entire storied career, that's exactly who Lindsey Graham was. He was the first person to make you laugh, and one of the last people that you've really ever wanted to fight. These were the traits that made him into one of the great figures in Senate history. Few like him. As a boy, Lindsey also learned his first lessons in diplomacy when the wife of one regular patron called the bar asking for her husband. She demanded to know, "Where is he?" The man instructed Lindsey, "Tell her I'm not here." And young Lindsey nodded and said into the phone to the wife, "He said to tell you that he's not here." That was Lindsey. When Lindsey was just 20 years old, he lost his mom to cancer. 15 months later, he lost his dad. Their deaths left his 13-year-old sister, Darlene, an orphan. But in God's mercy, she had her wonderful brother to take care of her. On top of it all, Lindsey became her guardian while still in college and helped raise her. He later said that for all his achievements, and he had many, his single proudest accomplishment in life was how well Darlene turned out. He had total respect and love for Darlene. Nothing could be more fitting than that woman who was Lindsey's proudest legacy, now continues his legacy of service in the U.S. Senate, a place that he cherished. And I have no doubt that he's looking down today, beaming with pride at his sister, Senator Darlene Graham. Thank you, Senator. Lindsey first stormed into Washington with the Republican Revolution of 1994, becoming the first Republican to win his House district in 120 years. That was Lindsey. In 2002, he ran for the Senate in what should have been a loss, and he swept to an easy victory. Lindsey quickly became a master at maneuvering in one of the world's great legislative bodies. He secured record funding for our military as a budget committee chairman. He delivered the largest investment in border security in history, and last year he shepherded the passage of the largest tax cuts in American history, the great, big, beautiful bill. Had a lot of Lindsey goodies in there, too, I can tell you. And of course, he was also a great champion of the United States Supreme Court. His impassioned defense of a wonderful person, a great gentleman, Justice Kavanaugh, ended a disgraceful attack on this very good man and gave us one of the greatest moments the Senate has ever seen. It was a truly monumental moment in Senate history. I believe it was Lindsey's perhaps finest hour. But no matter how heated things got in Washington, virtually everyone, Republican or Democrat, liked Lindsey. Well, not everybody, but it sounds good. Not everybody. He was a tough cookie, okay? I have to veer from this for a second. He was a tough cookie, Darlene, but he was beautiful. But he was also ready with a joke and a gleam in his eye. After being lectured on the excruciating details of patent law by a fellow senator during a flight, Lindsey declared that he had discovered a new form of enhanced interrogation and torture for the Guantanamo Bay area. He said, this is really bad stuff and boring. And while he was an incredibly hard worker, he was not exactly an early riser, as many of you know. When Senator Tim Scott, a great gentleman in his own right, I can tell you, invited him to prayer breakfast at 8:30 a.m., Lindsey told him, Tim, if Jesus himself comes back before 10 a.m., I ain't going. Yet, while he was always quick to laugh, and no one ever doubted the gravity of his mission, above all, Lindsey Graham believed in a strong America. He wanted a strong America. He had unwavering faith in the righteousness of American power and prayer. And he was extremely hawkish. I will tell you, he never saw a war that he didn't like. Only his true friends would understand that, but he wanted it for the good of our country. He felt in his bones that our destiny is to win, and that his job was to do everything he could to ensure our enemies would lose. It was this conviction that led him to serve 33 years in uniform in the Air Force and Air Force Reserves and Air National Guard, even while he was in office. And it was this conviction that took him as a senator to almost every country on earth, confronting America's adversaries and standing up for America's friends. He had tremendous friendships all over the world. It's a testament to his towering impact that among those mourning him here today are leaders, presidents, prime ministers from all over the globe. They're sitting right here before you. Lindsey met countless world leaders, yet wherever he went, he was always the same Lindsey Graham. When he met Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi in a tent in the desert, he told him, I expected something out of the Arabian Nights. This looks more like a Winnebago. That was not a good statement to make at the time. And when he met the Dalai Lama, Lindsey looked him straight in the eyes and said, so, can you really levitate? Dalai Lama was not happy with that. But no matter how high he rose, he never forgot where he came from. There's probably not a single town in South Carolina where Lindsey did not help repair a bridge, expand a school, improve a hospital, or recover from a disaster. He was a force of nature, and I will miss him greatly. As you remember, Lindsey and I did not exactly get off to the best of starts. Running against each other, back in 2016, Lindsey said something rather nasty on his flight to becoming the next president of the United States. So naturally, I did something that I shouldn't have done. I shared his personal cell phone number with the millions of people that happened to be watching that particular day as I made a speech, a very important speech. And I remember the number 202-228-0292 if anybody wants to give it a shot. His phone exploded. He said, I had that number for 20 years. His phone totally, I don't know what he did with it, but it exploded. That was the beginning of a friendship in a way. But it was Lindsey who had the last laugh, because while I blew up his phone for one day, we became great friends, and Lindsey did not stop calling me for the next 10 years. It was not easy. I always cherish the memories of our golf games, and only because of his really, and I will say, this memorial service, it's so hard to say, a memorial service for Lindsey, it's hard to say. But I'll admit that one time Lindsey Graham and Annika Sorensen actually beat me and Gary Player together. Can you believe that? Annika played very well that day, actually. But right to the end, Lindsey carried in his golf bag the putter that once belonged to his dad, and he carried it with him with class and with a ring that was so beautiful of his mother. And they were laying right at his bedside. The night he died, they were there. He had him with him at all times. From that pool hall where his parents raised him to the halls of the United States Senate, where he was respected and loved, this son of South Carolina became one of the most important men in the most important country on earth. In a city where politicians often become jaded and cynical, Lindsey Graham never lost the old-fashioned American idealism that brought him to the highest levels of government and life. He took his duty seriously without taking himself too seriously. He was unwavering in his principles, but always willing to listen. He always wanted to listen. And one thing about Lindsey that we all know, he never quit. You wanted him to quit, you waited for him to quit, but he would never quit. Above all, Lindsey Graham loved America, and he believed in the American people. If you shared that view, you had a friend in Lindsey. If you didn't share it, there was no fiercer or more constant opponent. Our nation needs more men and women like that great person sitting, laying, wherever he may be. I think I know where he is, and I think he's up there. I think he's watching us. I'm pretty sure of it. Scripture tells us that blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life. For 71 years, Lindsey Graham was strong and steadfast. As a brother, a senator, a warrior, and a patriot, he withstood every last test, every single test that you can go through and every trial. And now he wears the crown of life in heaven, reunited with his parents and reunited with his Lord. I end by saying something very, very special. Lindsey, we love you. God bless you. We will always be with you, and you were very, very special. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Flashpoint. You just heard from South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster and President Donald Trump, both honoring the life and legacy of Senator Lindsey Graham. I mentioned I was there in Columbia for that funeral procession and for, just kind of the pomp and circumstance, as you mentioned, getting the chance to talk to people. Of course, though, as we look ahead, this week is early voting for that special Republican primary, the 5th through the 7th. official election day being that following 11th for the primary.
Yeah.
And so people are having to look ahead very quickly.
Yeah.
So this is just some of the clips of people I talked to of, why did you come out here to talk, to honor Lindsey Graham, and have you started thinking about who you're going to vote for in this upcoming election? Why did you decide to come out here today?
Well, first off, of course, to honor Lindsey's memory. To me, he was an absolutely great senator. I often wrote to him about various and sundry different issues during the years, and he would reply promptly, either via email or letter. And I don't know if I still have any of those letters or not, but he did reply very promptly. And like the president said yesterday, he may have started humbly down here in the southeastern part of this state, but he rose to the pinnacle, and it was known worldwide. As we all know, he had just been in the Ukraine before he, came back and unfortunately had the heart problem that nobody knew about.
Can you tell me why you guys came out here today?
We came out to honor the senator because he did so much for veterans, and he was a veteran himself. He served so many years, and anytime you asked him or his staff to do anything for our veterans, he was more than happy to do it. Always very cordial. Anytime you met him or talked to him, he always made you feel important instead of you feeling like he was important. So we certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, and he not only for the Legion, for the armed forces, but for the country, and talking to different leaders and everything about what was going on, why we were doing this, why we were doing that, and trying to get support. And he's just an honorable man. I just think the world of him, to tell you the truth. I hate he's gone, but I really do.
What do you think his legacy will be?
Well, he's a tough act to follow, first of all, because he did so much for all the people, not just veterans, for all the people in South Carolina. We certainly appreciate what he did. His legacy would be the friendliness and the professionalism and the integrity that he maintained the whole time he was there.
I can't say any more. He said it all.
Specifically for veterans, what are some of the things that really made an impact?
Well, he was very instrumental in getting the PAC Act approved for the younger veterans, and that was a very good thing to do because younger veterans deserve that. And he always worked for the veterans. Anytime you dealt with him or his staff, they were very cordial and always wanted to do what they could to help us veterans.
Have you thought about, you said tough act to follow. What do you think needs to be qualities of someone who might follow it?
I'll be honest with you, you can't fill his shoes. You can go in there and try to do the act and do what you want to do, but you absolutely cannot fill his shoes. And I don't know who is capable of going in there and doing anything remotely like he did, because he was the connection for the President of the United States to the world, and he got things done for the President, and that not very many people can do that.
The President has endorsed his sister now, Senator Lindsey Graham, does that sway anything for you guys?
Not at all. I feel like that a qualified person needs to be in there regardless of who they are, and they've got plenty of people just biting at the bit wanting to be there.
12 people, I think.
Yeah, 12 people, and governors and congressmen and whatever, and all of them are capable. But it's a tough act to follow. You don't know who you want to vote for because there's so many good people there.
So of the people that are eligible, who are you thinking?
Well, basically, I'm kind of between two, just like I was in the gubernatorial situation. Darlene, of course, I would love for her to be able to, get back in at full tone, to replace him. And then I'm kind of leaning a bit towards Senator or Congressman Fry.
Congressman Fry.
But at the same time, I'm a little confused, shall we say. Is President Trump, is he straddling a fence here on this situation or what? Because he encouraged Darlene to seek a full term, but now he's coming out in ads for Fry. He's conservative, blah, 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 blah.
Does President Trump's endorsement mean a lot to you?
Yeah. You know, even though it didn't really help that much in this past gubernatorial, because at first he was for this candidate, and then when they ended up, the other one ended up actually winning the runoff. Yeah. Then he just said, "Oh, I'm for both." So I mean, wait a minute now, you know, but it does mean a lot.
Why did you decide to come out here today?
I'm bipartisan. I vote Democrat and I also vote Republican. And when you look at the voting record in the Senate today, I could swing votes either way. I think Lindsey Graham has done a great deal for our state. I think he's a great American, and I think he needs to be honored today, whether you voted for him or not. That's irrelevant. I think he needs to be honored because of his service to our country.
For so long, too. I mean, he represented South Carolina in this seat for more than 20 years.
Yes, he did.
What are some things that you think people will remember him for? What will his legacy be?
Well, I think for the service to our state alone, making sure our state was taken care of. I think in recent years, because of the world and our politics we're in right now, that he may be viewed not necessarily in a positive, but as I said before, we're here to honor his legacy. We're here to honor him as a person. We're here to give him the honor he deserves as being a member and a wonderful person for the state of South Carolina.
Have you thought about if you're going to vote in the primary?
I have.
Okay. Do you know if anyone you support?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at everybody, do an evaluation, and see who I think would best serve our country at this particular time.
Have you thought about, any thoughts on Senator Darlene Graham, his sister, filling that role?
I think it's wonderful that she was chosen. I think it was the right step for the president to make. And I think for her to serve out just a minor set of time for him, that was maybe the best choice.
And seeing, this is just a section I know all the way down. There's a lot of people, especially at the church. To see all these people out here paying their respects, what do you think that means?
I think it speaks well of his legacy. Whether we agree with what he was doing prior to his death, as I said before, I don't think that's really what we're here to do. We're here to support his legacy as we remember him throughout all the years in which he served.
All right, from that clip, you heard people talking about Senator Graham's legacy,
Yep.
also looking forward to this election. No one seemed to have a concrete answer on who they wanted to vote for. I did want to just clarify that it's down from 12. Officials found only 9 people were eligible. Duke Buckner, Congressman Russell Fry, Senator Darlene Graham, Mark Lynch, Mark McBride, Ralph Norman, Glenda Gale Parker, former Governor Mark Sanford, Samuel Shepard. 3 Marks, actually. I'm just now realizing a lot of Marks. So that's still quite the long list. Coming down from 12 people doesn't necessarily make it a slim race by any means.
Well, and what I chatted with Governor Sanford this past week, and one thing he pointed out is it's just an issue of math in that early voting is happening at the end of this week, and then the primary itself is August 11th. When you have a field of 9, it is hard to get above the 50% threshold.
Yep.
And in South Carolina, if you don't, as we just saw with the governor's race a month or 2 ago, it goes to a runoff.
Yep.
So more than likely, and he said this, he's like, there's no way this is going to happen without a runoff. It's whether or not he'll be in the runoff. But I think very likely this is not going to be finished on August 11th. It's going to go to the 25th. And right now, the 2 front runners could beat anybody's guess. I mean, I know Darlene Graham has some support out there because she has the president's endorsement. But just like we heard from those interviews, it's totally up in the air.
And I have gone out, since this conversation started and talked to people in Rock Hill and York County, but this was the most concentrated group of Republican voters in South Carolina that I've gotten a hold of since then. And I didn't talk to, that was just a couple clips. I didn't talk to anybody the whole day who was like, yes, this is who I'm voting for. I did ask specifically about Senator Darlene Graham because she got the endorsement of President Trump. But as you heard one of those people mention, that didn't sway enough in the gubernatorial runoff that just happened.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. But, multiple current elected officials, former elected officials, it'll be really an interesting race.
We'll see if it ends on the 11th or not. More than likely, probably not. We'll see.
Not feeling confident.
I know, right?
That's going to be the case.
There'll be 2 runoffs this summer in South Carolina. Goodness, wow.
I mean, I won't have to pitch for a long time.
I
I'll
know,
have stories
that's right.
for weeks.
More stories than you could possibly ever handle. All right, folks, that's going to have to do it for this edition of Flashpoint. We hope you'll join us next week, where I bet we'll be talking about some of those city council issues we talked about at the top of the show. So we hope you'll join us then.